So why don't doctors, lawyers, and most importantly, psychologists go through military basic training, which in cult world we call identity breaking indoctrination? Let's talk about that. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, and the author of Uncultured, about growing up in the Children of God religious cult, and then going into the cult of the U.S. Army. You can get signed copies here. I have the longest chapter by far. It's called Drink the Kool-Aid, and it is about basic training. And I've mentioned here before that doctors and lawyers and psychologists don't go, and I find that to be very significant that the psychologists don't go. But it's called direct commission. So there are certain people who have skills that the Army wants, and they know they can't get them if they treat them like regular soldiers. Because what motivation does a lawyer or a doctor or a psychologist have to submit themselves to basic training? They just don't. But the Army needs doctors and lawyers and psychologists. So they don't make them go to basic training. For the lawyers, that's all they get. It's called direct commission, and they go through what we call in the Army a gentleman's course, where you sleep in your own home every night. That is the definition of a gentleman's course. And it's basically, here's how you wear your uniform, and here's how you kind of be a soldier. It gets really interesting in the medical world because you'll have like a doctor who is a full bird colonel, but he just came in the military, but he has 20 years as a doctor, so they give him this rank, and then he has no idea how to be a soldier, but he's in charge of a hospital. It's very interesting. And again, they want their lawyers and their doctors and their chaplains and their psychologists to be in the military because they don't want them to be able to leave or go AWOL. They wouldn't be able to force them to stay deployed if they weren't in the military. And so for lawyers, that's all they get. They don't have to go through basic training. They're just lawyers, and they start off as like first lieutenants and they become captains very quickly. For doctors and psychologists, they all start off as captains, I believe, also registered nurses. And they get what's called pro pay. So they get an additional, I believe it's over $100,000 a year from the military in their salary. Because again, what would be your motivation to go into the military? And then there's one more way that people get into these programs with the military, and that is they go in the regular military and then they go to one of these programs that puts them through law school or medical school or to become a psychologist. So that is the one way that you get those people who have been to basic training, as if they were enlisted or officer like me on what I went through is also called a direct commission program, but you still go to basic training. You go to basic training, then you go to officer school, and in about 5 months you're an officer. And then you go to your core training, which for me was military intelligence school, which we call spy school. You can read all about all of this in my book or listen to it on audio. Signed copies are attached here. But yes, I find it very significant that the psychologists don't go through basic training, because I think if they went through in the modern day, and they would not be able to turn around and be like, yeah, that does no harm. Breaking people does harm. In Uncultured, you can see me beginning to have flashbacks to a religious schmex cult from basic training. It's that triggering. And of course, there's the wonderful line, I was born a soldier. It's not that different from cults.